There's a first time for everything. Like I said, I've been nervous all week. And I honestly felt kind of convicted in myself with all of it, because I'm like, I don't know what in the world I'm supposed to be doing, God, but like I've been trying to figure out any way in the world I could to possibly get away from it. And then it's like the name of the message that I've been trying to, that I knew that I had to do was Jesus, or God says come. And it's, move it up. Well, can I go back on top of my shirt? Am I good now? Okay. But we'll get started with a word of prayer, and then I'll dive right into it and get as much as what I can, and say as much as what I can. So God, just thank you for tonight, God. Just thank you for all the many blessings that you've given us, God. Just thank you for all the things that you do for each and every single one of us, God. I'm so thankful for the people that are here tonight, God, and I just ask that you just help me, God. Help me to not say any words that I would have to say, but just say everything that you would have me to say tonight, God. God, I thank you for all the things that you do for me. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your grace. And I thank you that what you've done in my life, God. I'm so thankful for that. God, I just ask that the hearts would be open tonight to be able to receive this, and just that you would just help us all. I just love you. I praise you and give you thanks in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. So, to get started, like I said, if I had to name of the message, if I had to name it, it would be God Says Come. In Matthew 11, chapter 28, it says, Come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I kind of found it funny this week how Robert and Gage and then Denard spoke about the different things that they did, because in my lifetime, that was kind of me. It was a place of very uncomfort situations, to a place of looking at Jesus, to a place to be able to grow wise through some of my experiences and what God had given me in those moments. And I thought that was awesome how it all lined up in those things. But to be able to tell you my story, whenever I was about 15, 16 years old, I got saved at Laurel Bluff Baptist Church. There was a preacher that came, and he was a preacher he preached on the wheat and the tare that day, and I can always remember that message, and I don't know really much about it, and I've always wanted to go back in the Bible and continue to study it, but I can just remember the conviction that I felt and knowing that I was lost and needed a Savior. But what got me to the altar and what got me to pray was not something that was not the conviction. It wasn't anything like that. It was my friends that had been before, that had went with me, and that had went to church with me that day, and they had went down to the altar, and I was sitting there, and I knew that I was lost, and I knew that I needed a Savior, and I knew that there was something that I had to do, but I was sitting there, and I was like, God, I ain't going unless some of my friends are there. I ain't going unless some of my friends are there, because, man, I can't do this alone. And later on, getting to this point in my life, I realized that I was never alone. But I went through that, got saved at that church, was there at that church for, I couldn't even tell you how long. Honestly, I was there for a while, 16 years probably of my life. But like I said, I went to the altar kind of for a different reasoning than what I was ever really intended to do, because I went for friends. And after that, all of my friends that I was really good friends with at that time did get saved that day, but the one thing that I could immediately change was that I could tell changed was my heart in situations. I always had the heart for people, but I never had any actions to back up any of my heart. Whenever I was probably 17, 18, I just completely kind of gave up on the whole entire situation, because I wasn't big on the whole God situation, because I was like, man, all I'm going to do is I'm going to church, I'm doing the right thing. I feel like I'm trying to do the right things, but the only thing I'm doing is failing. And if you know me, like Denard was saying, I don't like to lose. And whenever I feel like I'm losing in an every single day situation, why in the world would I continue to do it? That was my mindset. So I just had completely just kind of gave up on the whole situation. I'd still go because my family was there, and that's about it. But there, as far as growing or doing anything like that, I wasn't getting any of that. I wasn't beginning to try to grow. I wasn't beginning to try to do any type of growing because that just wasn't something that I just was over it. At 17, well, actually at the age of 14, I'd smoked weed for the first time, and I'd drank alcohol for the first time at the age of 14. Come on later in life, that's something that kind of haunted me. But I go through all of the high school stuff, go through it just like completely kind of get away from the whole God situation, go through my first 2 years of college, and I was kind of done. I was still just done with the whole situation. Like, I still go to church and stuff. I still had the heart for it, but none of my actions ever produced anything. But while I was in college, there was a time that Gage back there, and like I said this week, I said that, the people that had asked and texted to speak in this revival were people that had made an impact on my life. So Gage had started a Bible study. We were here, so I was probably a sophomore in college at Run State. And it was just kind of crazy how it all worked out. I'd ended up getting hurt in baseball, couldn't play baseball anymore. And then next thing you know, I was in Bible study helping Gage. Like, it was what I needed at the time, and it completely helped me get back into God, like the Word. And Gage challenged me because he wanted me to lead lessons. He wanted me to do things like that. And I didn't have really an understanding, but I just knew that I had to do it. And so I kind of got into that through Gage, and I went through that whole Bible study with a completely wrong mindset of how works and actions and different things like that, how I have to be. I lived a very trying to live my best perfect life and always continuing to fail, and I still didn't know any different. But I can still remember the goodness that God still had through that Bible study, and it was the first time that I really got to experience it in my life. At that time, we had every single week in Bible study, we were having 30 to 40 young kids come every single week. We had close to 6 or 8 people get saved through the Bible study while we were doing it. We had just some awesome spirit-filled services, different things like that, where they were just awesome to be in. But at the time, I was like I said, I was with the people I was still doing it with the completely wrong mindset. I was also dating a girl at that time, and whenever me and that girl broke up shortly after, that was the end of me in the Bible study. And from that point on in my life, until not too long ago, was some of the roughest years that I think I ever had in my life. After doing the Bible study stuff and doing stuff like that, I went for, I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. I went for two or so years with not really ever going, 2-3 years without really ever going to church. I went for 2-3 years with just no really relationship whatsoever. I didn't have any type of relationship at all. And during all of that, I really struggled. By the time that I was supposed to be senior in college, I was in my second year at Tennessee Tech. I had became addicted to marijuana. Being addicted to marijuana, everybody says that you can't be addicted, but that is something that is definitely false. Becoming addicted to marijuana was very hard for me, and was like something that you don't really even realize that it is. But every single morning before I could even get out of bed, I was having to, like whenever I was getting out of bed, that was to be the first thing that I would do was smoke weed. That's what got me out of bed. That's what I was living for. That's the only thing that I cared about, was trying to get high with my friends. Once again, the friends come in. And at that point in time, I didn't really understand everything that was going on. I had a little bit of a drinking issue, but it was mostly marijuana that was my choice. That's what I always wanted to do. I'd drink time to time, and it was never a pleasant sight for me to ever drink. And so I struggled with marijuana and different things like that for a whole year. But come December, and I guess this was in 2018. In December of 2018 is whenever I kind of rushed through all that first part, because 2019 is where I really want to stay. December of 2018 was the first real wake-up call and uncomfortability that God had ever really put me in. In December of 2018, I was planning on going back to school and going to go graduate next semester. I was just like, man, I didn't need to go to class. I could still make good grades. Didn't check my grades. Didn't do anything else. Next thing you know, Christians flunked out of college. And that was a very, very big wake-up call. And if you know my dad, that was one of the scariest conversations I've ever had to have. But through that moment, like, I smile now because, like, it's just so awesome to see what God could do. So, like, that night, the night that I got kicked out of school, I was like, well, there goes my job. There goes everything that I'd worked for. There goes all the stuff that I'd tried to do. There goes every single thing in my life that I had worked for up to this point. And for about the first time in one whole year, I'd been brought to rock bottom, and I prayed. That was probably the first time in the whole year that I'd prayed and had asked God for anything. That was the first time that I looked to Him in anything. 6 months prior to this, I knew that as Denard was saying last night, you don't have to tell an addict they're an addict. You don't have to tell an alcoholic they're an alcoholic, because they already know. I tried to fix myself for 6 months before I ever gave Him a chance, because I thought I could do it on my own. Come 2019, or I guess I'm skipping ahead. That night that I prayed, the very next day, the people at work that I work with now, as you can tell where the story's going, called me and they said, "We posted a job for you. Don't go back to school." And I was sitting there and I was like, now hold up. I just flunked out of school. I just completely screwed up everything. And then I go to God one time and then they're telling me I got a job? How does this work out? And so next thing I know, I try to continually start bettering myself and continually try to just seek God and with everything that I was really trying to do at that point. And for the first 7 days of 2019, I laid in bed coming off an addiction for marijuana. People will say, like I said earlier, that it's not really an addiction. It's not something that you have that you just don't get addicted to marijuana. And that's one of the biggest false things that I could ever say, because I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything, and I was honestly sick in my head, in my body, in my mind, and I was just sick the whole entire time. Come a couple month or so later, I'm still living this middle ground life because I'm like, well, I see that you got me a job, but like, I still want to do what I want to do. I still want to do what Christian wants to do. So let's just continue. Like, I'm going to thank you for that, but I'm going to continue to go on over here and do what I want to do. Or so I thought. 2 weeks goes by, and one of my friends texts me, and we're texting back and forth, and I'd really kind of like been studying the Bible and doing some different things like that, and throughout my spare time, and really trying to dig deep in the Word and just trying to find peace and comfort in the middle of everything else that was going on in my life. Finding peace and comfort in the Bible was pretty easily done because that's where it comes from. But whenever I was going through all those situations and I was texting that friend that night, I'd for the first time in probably about a year and a half, 2 years, I kind of broke my Facebook silence of posting about Christianity and posting about my faith in God. And one of my friends kind of messaged me, and she said something like, I think you need to start a Bible study. And I said, hold up. Do you know what I went through? Do you know what I've done? Do you know who I've been in my life, and you're wanting me to start a Bible study? You're out of your mind. I'm not doing it. About 3 weeks later, a Bible study started. And truthfully, honestly, that's been one of the biggest blessings that I've ever had in my whole entire life. Those guys have been kind of my accountability partner in everything. They've been all of what I can possibly ever have imagined and so much more in my life. Throughout the Bible study, I came into a lesson and I didn't really know where to go with the lesson. Like I had no clue. I just knew where I was supposed to go, and I was in Matthew 14, and I'm probably going to get there tonight. But I was in Matthew 14 and talking about Peter walking on the water. That lesson I came back to a year later, and I threw it away because it was so crap. And I had taught them just like this completely different thing. And for me to go from where I did in 2019 to 2020, honestly, has been amazing. But so I go through all of that, start a Bible study. The Bible study was just it was something that has been pretty constant with the exact same amount of members and different people coming. And there's people in here tonight that have been coming and different things. And literally from the bottom of my heart, I thank you guys. But starting the Bible study was something that was a huge step of faith for me and something that was really, really, really hard for me to do. But throughout the Bible study, I still had not understood who God was. And I still had not understand what He could do in somebody's life and how He could transform somebody's life. And throughout all of that, like throughout the Bible study, there was times where I was way up, and there was times whenever I was way low. And I never really let anybody see any of those because I always tried to stay constant in my own feelings because I didn't want them questioning me because I'm supposed to be the leader of the Bible study. And honestly, that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I think that we ever can have as Christians is that we don't realize that we are broken. And so throughout the Bible study, like obviously I'm a sinner, but like I lived as good as what I knew how to for a few months. And then I'd bounce back and forth, trying to go back to an old life, trying to hang out with the same friends that I was always with because I didn't want to ever leave those guys. Those were my friends that I'd always had and always been with. And next thing you know, it's like you can't even be comfortable in between with yourself because you're living a double life. You're living a life of one day saying that you're preaching and saying who Jesus is, and the next day you're going and living an exact opposite. And my uncomfortability moment came in the next couple months in 2019. In 2019, I had lost I'd lost every single friend that I'd grown up with. I'd lost all my friends that I'd grown up with. I'd lost different people that came into my life and that I loved dearly at the time, and I lost them. I lost just different people in my life that really, really, truly hurt. Like it hurt. It was a moment of brokenness in my life that I didn't really think that I would ever recover from. At that point in my life, you just flash forward throughout all of it. I tried, like I said, I lived a double life, kind of going back and forth. There'd be 2 weeks I'd be great, another week I wouldn't. And then, you get to a point where you're absolutely just miserable because you can't take it anymore. So as I told you, in 2019, I started my first 7 days as laying in bed. About the last 3, I'd laid there asking God to take me from this place because I was done. I was done trying. I was done fighting. I was done with everything. And I just asked him, I said, God, I'm done with all of this. You take me. And there's moments in your life where you go through dry spells and different things where you don't understand anything that's going on. And I'd been there. Like I was there and I didn't understand anything that was going on, and I was hurting. And there was just one night out of the blue that I was sitting there and I was just done. Like I was so mad at God. I was so mad at everything, and I was just done. So I was like, you know what? I'm going away from this place. I'm going to go somewhere and I'm just going to have fun with my friends, and I'm just done. And this is whenever God really always shows up, and it always is one of those moments that I always will remember. So that night this is like December, I go to a bar with some of my friends, and I'm the designated driver because I don't want to drink. Like I'm going to try. Like I'm still going to try to live correctly. Well, it ends up like I have too much to drink, but during all of that, God kind of showed me that He still cared, because Tammy texted me in the middle of the place that night, and she said, buddy, are you okay? She said, you're not, like, what's wrong? What's going on? What's happening? And I was like, I was trying to shoo her off, but you know how she is. She's not going to take that for an answer. And so I go through all of that, and I honestly came back the next day, and like I still drove that night and somehow made it home. And that was another point in my life where I saw God for the first time, not only through text, but I got to see Him because His love and His grace took me to a place where I didn't need to. I got to a place where I had to go, even though I shouldn't have been there, like getting home. And I'm so thankful for that. But God, throughout all of this, it showed me so much, and He showed me just how He never will give up on each and every single one of us. And I'm thankful for that. He, in those moments, in those times of my life, it was very, very, very dark places. So at that moment in my life, like I still, like I came home, I went to Gage's house, and I was just completely, I drove home the next day, and the only thing I did was cry. Because I was so shameful in myself and so just completely just broken, completely just like condemning myself. Then that was a Sunday morning. Tammy had asked us to me and Gage to come here that night, and I was just like, I ain't doing it. Like there ain't no way in the world I'm going to do that. Like there's nothing that's going to, no, I ain't doing it. Next thing you know, Tammy sends me a message, and I'm driving through Buddy's Barbecue, and it's a sermon from Keith here at High Ridge. It was talking about surrender. At that moment in my life, I'd realized what had been missing. I'd realized what had happened in my life. I realized where everything had gone wrong. I sit there and I watch that video. I couldn't watch it that night because I was just still too defeated in myself. But I pulled that video up on about a Tuesday. No, it was a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday morning at work, and I got there early, so I was sitting in my office, and I pulled it up about 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, and I completely just bawled my eyes out. I completely had a new perspective on my life. I completely had a new entire, I just had a new whole entire image of who God was, what He'd done, and that message, I wasn't even here, but that whole series was meant for me. And the next, so that Wednesday night is whenever I came to High Ridge for the first time. And ever since that point, I don't think I can hardly miss because it's been too good. Because after surrender became your blessing. And in those moments, that's what I really truly figured out. Once you surrender to what He's trying to do in your life, the blessing will come after. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to experience His blessings. I went from a person that knew very little and tried to not know anything about God because, quite frankly, I was mad at the whole situation and I didn't like losing, just like I told each and every single one of you tonight. But I come in here now and it's completely different. I used to look at the verse that says, He says, I come to give life, and I come to give life more abundantly. I said, that's the biggest bunch of bullcrap I've ever heard in my life. And now I understand every single bit of it. I understand everything that he's taught. I understand all of what He's trying to say. I understand. I had to go through all of that, the fire, and man, it was so hard. It was so hard. And I'm a easygoing, pretty upbeat type person most of the time. And for me to get to a point in my life where I didn't even want to live anymore is hard for me to even imagine. And I'm just so thankful that God sees us through His Son. Because I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve anything that has happened to me, but He blesses me because of Him. And I'm thankful for that. Whenever I was going over all this, I was trying to think of, I felt like I could not go to any type of scripture and read you guys anything unless I tell you a little bit of a backstory of who I am and why I am the way that I am. The reason that some of these times that I sit here and that I don't have anything to say, but there's just tears that stream down my face, is because I'm thankful. I'm thankful. You know, that's something that I'll never take for granted. I'll never take for granted what he can do in somebody's life and how he can change situations around and what he can do. You know, I was talking about Matthew 14 earlier with Peter walking on the water. I think it's Matthew 14. Yeah, Matthew 14 with Peter walking on the water. And, you know, we always are talking about and looking at the miracles with that. But, you know, we always wonder where in the world God's miracles at today. You're looking at one tonight. You're looking at one. You know, what God did in my life was something that completely transformed me, and I had to go through the fire because I wouldn't have got it any other way. I wouldn't have been able to get it any other way. That was the only way that I was going to do it, because I'm stubborn and I don't want to listen, and I'm going to do it my way, and that's the way it's going to happen. And he kind of showed up and showed me that that's not how it's going to happen. You know, whenever I was thinking about this tonight, I was thinking about the moments in my life, whenever the 6 months really that I tried to fix myself, and I lived in the complete miserableness of everything going on. I lived in the complete miserableness of knowing that I was doing wrong, but not knowing how to fix it, and trying to fix myself, and wondering how in the world am I ever going to be able to fix myself? And that's where he says, come. You see, we live in a country right now that's completely divided, completely 100% torn apart, and completely 100% just loves to fight with each other. Because we always try to fix worldly situations with worldly solutions. We always try to fix the world with worldly solutions. We always want to try to fix the world with, what can we do better here? What can we do better here? I would promise you, if we'd stop taking God out of the middle of everything, that's whenever it would be getting a little bit better. You know, I'm so thankful that throughout everything, he still says, come. I'm glad that in my life that I'm able to sit here and say that, you know, he says come. There's people all over the world that are struggling, that are going through different situations, that are fighting, and that are just wanting some clarity and peace in these times, and it's there, and he's waiting with open arms saying come. And whenever I was reading this scripture, whenever Peter walking on the water, it says, and he said, come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? You know, I got to thinking about that, and something that I never really had thought of, but, you know, all of us in our lives, we always want to say that we always want to say that we're coming to Jesus. We always want to, like Gage said, we want to strive to look at Jesus. And you know, in my life, like I said, it's always been easier for me to be thankful after everything that happened to me. But it's always, since I came out of something that was so big, it's always been hard for me to go to him with these things, the smallest things. And I got to thinking about that this week, and, you know, the name of the revival was It's Time to Make an Impact. How in the world are we going to make an impact in our country? How in the world are we going to make an impact in our church? How in the world are we going to make an impact in just to the people around us, in our communities, if we won't even go to him with the smallest of things? How in the world are we going to go and be different whenever we can't go to him with anything? For me, it's been always hard for me to go, like I said, to go to him with anything. It's been hard for me to go to him with it's been hard for me to go to him with any of the life situations. It's been hard for me to go through to him with any of those. It's just been hard for me to just seek him out because it's so hard. It's like, man, it's just this big God. I'm going to go and do it. Like, I think I can, I'm going to handle it myself. I don't need your help. I got it. I got it. And those little situations always turn into something that's much bigger. And it's always something that ends up with me coming to him if I would have just came in the first place. I was thinking about whenever Peter walked on the water, if he would have just been halfway in and wouldn't have came like he'd said, he would have just had 1 foot out of the boat and 1 foot in. He could have still been standing on the water he could have still been standing on the water. He could have still been standing on the water with 1 foot. But everybody would have told him that he was never standing on he wasn't standing on the water because he was still halfway in the boat. For my life, that was a long time. I kind of stood halfway in between the middle of both of it, knowing what was right, knowing what was wrong, and knowing what was I shouldn't have always done. But I'm thankful that God can still give us grace and love and mercy through every single bit of it. I'm thankful that He reaches down and for me, I got to experience grace firsthand. I got to experience His love firsthand. I got to experience all of that firsthand because I had to go through the fire. And I remember the last thing that I really said is that whenever I was going through everything that I was going through, one of the last things that I can really remember saying before my whole, before 2020 came around, and just honestly, it's just been a completely change of mind, was, and I didn't even believe this at the time, but it's just something that I thought was right to say, and I was trying to make myself believe it, was, He'd been with me through it all. Up until a couple months ago, it had been hard really for me to see that He'd been through it. He'd been with me through it all. But I'm thankful that that He was with me through it all. And I'm thankful that He said, come. Whenever I wasn't even close in my mind to being anywhere near good enough to be able to come. I don't have anything else. That's literally my testimony wrapped up in a short version because I can stretch it on as long as what I can possibly do. And it's very hard for me to, you can ask the Bible study, it's very hard for me to wind it down. But if nothing else, I just want you to know that no matter where you're at in life, no matter what you're going through, no matter where God's taken you in your life, I want you to know that He's there saying, come. He's there with arms open. His feelings, nothing changes. He loves you the same as what He did before. He will always continue to love you. And He sits there with His arms open and He just asks you to come. No matter where you're at in life, no matter what you're doing in your life, He says, come. I'm a perfect example of what it's kind of like whenever you come. And I don't mean to say that to brag on myself or anything like that, but to know me before and to know me now, it's not even the same person. It's completely changed. And it was nothing of my doing. Denard was talking about last night about how you got to be changed from the inside out. He's still working on me. But He's changed my life forever, and I'm thankful for that. So, Keith, if you want to say anything, or